Jessica, Mark, Emily, and David were four close friends, eagerly awaiting the end of their senior year in high school. As autumn arrived, they decided to spend a night in the old school building, reminiscing about the years they had spent there. They thought it would be a fun and spooky adventure, a chance to make one last memory before they graduated. They had heard the rumors about the school being haunted, but none of them really believed in ghosts. On a chilly Friday night, after everyone else had left, the four friends managed to sneak back into the building. Armed with flashlights and snacks, they were ready for a night of fun and mild scares. They began their adventure in the main hall, laughing and joking as they explored the familiar but now eerie surroundings. The long corridors and empty classrooms seemed much more sinister in the darkness. After wandering around for a while, they decided to make their way to the library. As they stepped inside, the door suddenly swung shut behind them with a loud bang. Jessica ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked tight. "Guys, this isn't funny," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The others rushed to help her, but the door wouldn't budge. "Maybe there's another way out," Mark suggested, trying to stay calm. They began searching the library, looking for any hidden exits or clues. Behind a dusty old bookshelf, they discovered a small, barely noticeable door. It led them down a narrow staircase to an old, unused basement. The air grew colder as they descended, and an uneasy feeling settled over them. In the basement, they found strange symbols painted on the walls and old forgotten items scattered around. In one corner, there was an old radio covered in dust. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, and a child's voice whispered through the static, "There is no way out." The friends froze, fear gripping their hearts. Emily clung to David, her voice shaking. "What is going on? This is supposed to be just a fun night. We need to get out of here." David, trying to be brave, looked around for any other exits. They found a small window near the ceiling, but it was too high to reach. Mark grabbed an old chair and tried to break the window, but it wouldn't shatter. "There's something really wrong here," Mark said, his voice tense. "We need to find another way out." They continued to explore the basement, their fear growing with each passing minute. They stumbled upon an old locker, and inside, they found a dusty old diary. The diary contained records of mysterious events that had happened at the school years ago. Many students and teachers had disappeared suddenly and were never seen again. As they read the diary, a sense of dread washed over them. The entries described how the school was built on land that had once been a burial ground. There were stories of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena. One entry in particular caught their attention. It was written by a former principal, Mr. Thompson, who had mysteriously disappeared. He wrote about hearing voices and seeing apparitions. His last entry read, "I fear I am not alone. They are here, and they want us to join them." The friends looked at each other, their fear palpable. "We need to get out of here," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. They decided to return to the library and try the door again. But as they climbed the stairs, they heard footsteps echoing through the corridors above them. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Panic set in, and they rushed back to the basement, hiding behind some old furniture. The footsteps stopped, and the friends held their breath, listening intently. A cold breeze swept through the basement, and they heard a faint whisper, "Join us." Jessica's eyes widened with terror. "We have to find another way out, now," she exclaimed. They moved cautiously, trying to find another exit. As they explored deeper into the basement, they came across an old janitor's closet. Inside, they found a trap door hidden beneath a pile of rags. Mark and David managed to pry the trap door open, revealing a dark tunnel. This must lead somewhere, David said, trying to sound hopeful. One by one, they climbed down into the tunnel, using their flashlights to guide the way. The tunnel was narrow and damp, the air thick with the smell of mold. They could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. As they made their way through the tunnel, they heard strange noises, whispers, laughter, and the sound of footsteps behind them. Jessica kept looking over her shoulder, convinced that they were being followed. "We have to keep moving," Mark urged. "We can't stop now." The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning. They came across old, rotting wooden beams that looked like they could collapse at any moment. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a larger cavern. In the center of the cavern, there was a circle of stones, and in the middle of the circle was an old, tattered book. The air around the circle felt charged, and an oppressive silence filled the space. Emily approached the circle cautiously. "This must be connected to the diary," she said, reaching for the book. As she touched it, a cold shock ran through her body, and she pulled her hand back. "Something is very wrong here," she whispered. David, determined to find a way out, started looking around the cavern. He noticed a small opening on the other side. "I think I see a way out," he called to the others. They carefully made their way around the circle of stones, avoiding the eerie book in the center. As they approached the opening, they heard a loud crash behind them. Turning around, they saw the stones in the circle, glowing with a faint, eerie light. Shadows began to form, taking the shape of figures. The friends watched in horror as the figures became more distinct, revealing the ghostly forms of students and teachers from the past. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. "We have to go, now," Mark shouted. They scrambled through the opening, finding themselves in another narrow tunnel. The ghostly figures followed them, their whispers growing louder. The friends ran as fast as they could, the tunnel seeming to stretch on endlessly. Finally, they saw a faint light ahead. "That's the way out!" Jessica cried. They pushed themselves harder, desperate to reach the light. As they emerged from the tunnel, they found themselves in the school's old boiler room. The door to the outside was just a few feet away. They ran to the door, flinging it open and spilling out into the cool night air. They didn't stop running until they were a safe distance from the school. Out of breath and terrified, they huddled together, trying to process what had just happened. "What was that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. "Were those really ghosts?" David nodded, still panting. "I don't know what they were, but we need to stay away from that school." Mark agreed. "We'll never speak of this again. No one would believe us anyway." Jessica looked back at the school, a shiver running down her spine. "I don't ever want to go back there. Let's just forget this night ever happened." The friends made a pact to never return to the school and to keep the events of that night a secret. They knew that what they had experienced was real, but it was too horrifying to share. The old high school, with its dark history and restless spirits, would remain a place of nightmares for them. They hoped that by staying away, they could leave the past behind and move on with their lives. But deep down, they knew that the shadows of that night would haunt them forever.